Welcome back, everybody. This is John Malanka with the United Patients Group. Be informed and be well. Today's guest is Dr. Matthew Halpert. He is actually the Director of Research and Development for Medterra CBD, which you've probably seen on our site lately. He's equipped with a Ph.D. from the University of Alabama. He is currently responsible for all product-related R&D from performing pharmacokinetic studies on the efficacy of reviewing the latest peer-reviewed publications on cannabidiol, also known as CBD. Dr. Halpert also holds a faculty position at Baylor College of Medicine, where he studied both the efficacy and the immunological processes, homeostatic regulation, and cancer immunotherapy, which I want to get into that as well. So welcome to the show, Dr. Halpert. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing all right here.
So Baylor College of Medicine is in Houston, while Baylor College is in Waco, correct?
Correct. Those are not the same university.
Not the same university.
Not the same. No.
I was going to say, because I know Baylor University in Waco has been on, I'm a big Jeopardy nut, and so it's been, I know it's come up on a couple of their questions over the years. And so
yes, that comes up. Also, Baylor School of Medicine or Baylor Medical School. People seem to put a lot of things there. It's Baylor College of Medicine. So
but it's in the grand state of Texas. So welcome to the show.
All right, thank you.
So let's get right into it. You know, how did you, if you talk about your background, one of your credentials, and I know we spoke off camera about what you've done prior to becoming an expert in CBD, because you have a whole background of cancer and testing and immunology. And so can you talk about the cancer immune system and then leading into where you are today?
Sure, I can do that. So first and foremost, I'm here speaking on my own behalf, not necessarily on behalf of Baylor College of Medicine, just to be clear. But so yes, I'm an immunologist, research faculty at Baylor College of Medicine. I've spent roughly the past 10 years working on the immune system and how it relates to cancer or inflammation, kind of two sides of the coin there, right? So cancer, in the situation of cancer, the immune system has not properly turned on and eliminated the cancer. And on the other side of the coin, you have chronic inflammatory conditions where the immune system seems to be overacted and fighting against nothing, just destroying your insides, leading to issues like IBD or arthritis and things like that. So for the longest time, I've been very fascinated with how the immune system really works, what regulates it, how to keep it under control. And this led to a lot of exciting advancements in the field of cancer and getting the immune system to properly recognize it and destroy it. And around a couple of years ago, as the 2018 Farm Bill was passing and CBD was becoming a bigger and bigger deal, I started working with that at Baylor, just in some little experiments to see if it could have any effect on cancer cells and tumor formation and things like that. And the results at that time were very encouraging. And so I kind of continued to work with CBD in a couple of just different experiments just to sort of see, you know, is there anything to this? I mean, obviously you and your viewers, I'm sure, are aware there is no shortage of anecdotal claims behind CBD. It can cure everything. If you've got an amputated leg, I'm pretty sure CBD can fix that. So there's a lot of claims out there, a lot of people saying things, and I was more interested in what the science had to say. What is scientifically valid? What can we really accomplish here with cannabis, cannabinoids, CBD? And so I started working under that purview. Along the lines, a couple of different for-profit CBD companies ended up getting in touch with me and asking me to work with them and to do some research for them. And what I learned very quickly is the CBD industry is largely not regulated. And companies and people can put whatever they want on a bottle, basically, and they can tell you, here's 500 milligrams of the purest CBD ever. And I know firsthand that's not always the case. So I started, and I don't know what these companies thought, but I analyzed the products they gave me. Literally, I would look at some of them by electron microscopy and or we would do mass spec or HPLC, and the reports back would be like, yeah, there's nothing here. This is contaminated. I mean, don't eat this. I don't know if that's hair or what, but it's just some really subpar products. This is very discouraging. And probably I learned a bigger problem than I ever would have guessed. And I think at this point, we talked a little bit about it off air. Other journalistic sources will say have gone to the rigors of testing different products from different companies, and they've of course published on some of that. And you'll see we tested 47 different companies, and 6 of them were accurate, and the others were not selling what they said they were selling.
I think that's a generous number.
It's, well, you know, when that farm bill passed, you had a little bit, and you still do, a little bit of the wild, wild west, gold rush mentality. There's money in these hills, and so people are just trying to make a buck, and they're not necessarily doing things the right way. So fast forward a little bit, by a complete coincidence almost that is just too long to go into on this podcast, I got hooked up with Jay Hartenbach and JP Larson at Medterra over at Irvine, California. And they completely shared my viewpoint of science should go first. We should be accountable. We should be transparent. We should make a good product with all the right conditions. And more importantly, we shouldn't sell products based on false claims or products that aren't actually going to do what we are saying they're going to do. It was kind of a breath of fresh air that there was at least someone out there. And this isn't to say Medterra is the only one, but at that time, that was the only one I had come in contact with that was very much science first, science first, science first. Dr. Halpert, can we send you a product? Can you actually run it through some experiments and then give us a report? And so we know if we should go forward with that or not. And I said, sure. And that started with some small experiments. They went well. I was able to confirm several things, including the quality of their CBD product, first and foremost, from batch to batch, because I was getting different batch samples. And then I started working with it in regards to inflammation. And sure enough, through a number of different experiments, yeah, I would say bona fide, I can say our research and other published science clearly indicates CBD has an anti-inflammatory role through so many more mechanisms than most people realize. It is not just it's not hitting just one receptor in your body, it's hitting numerous. And so I think there's potentially a lot of safe and effective value there. And just to, again, give an example, and I have to, because I don't think most companies are doing this, but Medterra has a CBD cream, and they came up with a new formulation, and they sent both to me blinded and said, will you run these side by side and tell us how they compare in inflammation? And I ran the test. Cream B did better than cream A. I wrote up a report. I gave them the results. All I ever promised to give is just what the data is. And they're like, that's great. Our new formula actually works better. So we'll sell that now. Right. And to prove a point, they also sent me the exact same thing for 2 different roll-ons, and the new formula did not work better. And so to their credit, they said, well, we're not rolling that out. We're going to go back to the drawing board and figure out why it didn't work better. I can't imagine most CBD companies are going to that kind of effort to test their products.
It's funny you say, out of the products that I'm using on a regular basis is one of their creams, and the lotion, little pump bottle. And I'm an avid cyclist and runner, and I constantly rev it on my legs, my calves, my knees, before my runs all the time. And so,
and how's it working for you?
It's working great. I like it. It has the I'm trying to see what it has, the menthol in there as well. So yep. I like it, knowing that something's also working in there. But I use it on a regular basis. I've given it to family members as well too. So to hear that out of all the products, so I don't know if I have the new or the old.
I don't either, but
but it is working on that too.
Yeah, the old work.
Sorry,
I'm saying the old product still works.
Yeah.
They just made something that works better. So, but yes, go ahead.
Well, I'll let you know. You're talking about access, in the gold rush. And I wasn't really on board when, how my wife and I, who I shared with you, has passed away a few years ago from pancreatic cancer. And I know that's part of your studies too, so we can get on another show with that one. Everybody, I wasn't, when the CBD market just blossomed, we use THC dominant products to kill cancer cells. And I think you need to have both when fighting something as severe as cancer. The entourage effect that the THC has been proven to kill cancer cells while CBD stops the spread. So a formulation, at least for us, is what has worked with another family member. With all these CBD companies popping up, these hemp CBD companies that have been popping up over the years, I really hadn't been on board until recently. And when I say recently, in the last 2 years, I went and toured a facility, a farm, and really was educated because I've seen the stuff that's out there. When the first round of CBD, hemp CBD that made it into our office, onto my desk, I would test it myself. I'd go and test it to a third party, and the test results of labs that I trusted were completely different from the test results that they sent me. And this one company, which is frustrating, it's a well-known company, I won't mention it, the nutritional value came out to 117%. And I said, guys, how do you get 117%? And they actually laughed, haha, no one will notice. I said, well, I noticed. And I think that's important of the reputation that we've built in this industry. United Patient Group is going out and vetting companies, like you said as well. You tried all these companies, let's do a test and see if their numbers really match up to what I'm seeing, especially you being a scientist, seeing what's matching up in the lab. And so you said, where'd that hair come from? I think that's what you said, right? In the product?
That was one of the products, yeah.
One of the products, hair. But I always share that with people. You test for mold, pesticides, fecal matter, and they go back and they go, fecal matter, are you kidding me? And I said, some test results will show what's in there. So know that you're putting it into your body. And so if a company does not have lab results and test results, and nowadays you have QR codes, you have batch numbers, so you can see exactly what batch that's coming from. If they don't have that, go find another company, because you and I both know there are thousands of other companies out there. Some good, some great, some bad. And we've done a study on the good, the bad, and the ugly. Little Clint Eastwood there, but it's the truth of what's out there. You're putting this on your body. You're putting this in your body. So be aware of what's there. And if there aren't test results attached to that product from a QR code or wherever you're purchasing it, try another one. Me personally, I probably wouldn't buy something from your local gas station.
Right.
And so, but anyway, sorry.
I want to address two of your points actually, because they sparked something. So there are companies that, they'll say whatever, 100 milligrams, and then they'll run a test and it will be 200 milligrams, and they'll proudly say 200% of what we say.
Oh.
That's not any better, quite frankly, than being at 0%. Look, people make the mistake of thinking blatantly, just flat out, if some is good, more must be better. And that's not necessarily true. A lot of biological systems do not work that way. There's a happy area where you can be under it and underpowered, too little. But if you go over that area, you start getting negative feedback, and your body starts, we're swamped with this, and it starts actually shutting it down. So it's a misnomer to think you're getting more, or something. Like, you need to get you need to know what you said, what you're putting in your body, not just what, but how much. And you need, there's that. And then the other point about testing. So this is also one of the reasons I was excited to join up with Medterra, and even Medterra partners. They proudly put up their CGMP licenses, which means they are current good manufacturing practices. It means they had to have been third-party audited and checked and meet a bunch of standards and requirements. You cannot do trials with the FDA without a CGMP license. And so to have that is to say how clean. And of course, so Medterra not only has that in-house, the CGMP licensure, but if you go on their website, for sure, they post every mass spec analysis of every batch that they produce right there. Like they're not hiding. They're like, here, look, here are the mass spec results carried out by a third party, that we don't control. And here are the results. Again, they're not the only company doing that, but to any company that is doing that, I say kudos, thank you, because at least that is somewhere. And eventually, hopefully, those will be the companies that hold the industry.
Exactly. And I think we need that, to bring that, because there has been a lot of stuff that's populating here in the industry. You and I can go out and buy a 55-gallon drum of it, CBD. And if we have a great marketing department, we can put our labels on it, John and Matt CBD, John and Matt CBD. And that's the frustrating thing, because I'm saying majority, but a lot of the products in the industry are the exact same product, just different label.
Yes.
Because they're able to go to this Costco type of a CBD type of supplier and do that. And so my biggest, we're getting a little off thing, but my biggest frustration is when I see labels that misspell CBD. I'm just like, how do you misspell CBD? And it happens all the time.
It's not a good start.
Sorry?
So it's not a good start.
No, it's not a good start. And I even listened to ESPN radio one time. Kurt and I were in the car, and they were saying CBB, Charlie Bravo Bravo. And I'm like, oh my gosh, guys, come on. So CBD cannabidiol. So anyway, let's get back on track.
Okay.
What you're doing there in Baylor. And so is Baylor open-minded to having CBD or cannabis in their thing? Or were they open-minded before the Farm Bill, or did this happen after the Farm Bill and they said we can bring it in?
So Medterra actually started to form a relationship with Baylor before the passage of the Farm Bill, and they wanted to use me at that time to run experiments in the lab. And I naively thought, sure, this won't be a big issue. Yeah. Next thing you know, I'm talking to all kinds of lawyers at Baylor, outside counsel, and I'm just, guys, it's CBD. What's the problem? And they're like, what I was filled into is, at that time, it was still a Schedule I drug. I mean, me working with that was the same as my working with LSD or heroin in the eyes of the scheduling system. And so they were like, so we really can't just, they can't send that across state lines. We can't have that here unless you have an appropriate researcher license. And so I was getting ready to go through the 6 months and get the license needed. But the Farm Bill passed a week later. And so then I checked with them, and they said, well, that makes it a lot easier. Now we need to see if Texas is going to abide, basically.
Which is a tough state. I mean, we work with so many patients on a regular basis that, their hands are tied. And weren't you doing a bunch, wasn't your state doing a bunch of random road stops? I mean, I had friends that lived from Houston and they moved to California.
Believe it.
And he was following his wife and the daughter in their car. He was in the U-Haul, and they came to a stop. What do you have in here? My daughter's belongings. And they went through his all the belongings, but they were looking for drugs, I guess. And we've had patients that have driven to California to obtain medicine for their loved one, and on the way home they got pulled over.
Yeah.
And
3 months took about 3 months for Texas to say, okay, we're in. We'll abide by the new scheduling system. CBD's descheduled, no longer Class 1. And once that happened, Baylor had no issue. They were okay. It's not an illegal drug anymore. If you want to research with it, it's fine. You just have to go through the normal appropriate protocol approval and all the things to do experiments. We're not allowed to just wake up one day and do an experiment. I mean, that's how it used to be done, but not today. So, I've got to file all the protocols and what I plan to do and get approval of that. But yeah, they were fine with it. And even if you look in the, stratosphere of the internet, you'll see a press release from that year in which Baylor seemed to be very proud of, we're teaming up with Medterra. And the point was, science needs to step up here. I mean, if it doesn't, the whole area is going to be flooded with unsubstantiated claims. So let's get on it. And since that, Baylor's issued even a couple of press releases, and they've been, I think, overall, I think they've been pretty proud and happy with the relationship.
When you say experiment, you can't just come in and do experiments. So are there certain things you come after that you're going after? Are you doing anything on cancer studies with CBD? Are you doing stuff on autoimmune diseases and pain? I mean, how does that work as a scientist?
So, okay, sure.
That's a trick question.
It's a loaded question.
Oh,
There's a
really?
lot that
Okay.
goes
I
in.
mean, no,
Yeah.
you were saying we just can't experiment like we used to, and you have to, fill out the forms and stuff like that. And so, as a scientist, you go in there and say, "This is what our next project will be."
There's a lot of oversight. Let's say that Baylor's a large institution. Baylor, when I say Baylor, I mean Baylor College of Medicine. Large institution. They're going to protect themselves. They're going to, and it's also very important that they make sure any animals we use or anything that we do is safe, appropriate, humane, ethical, all those things. And so the way it works is if I want to do, for example, an experiment, this is a little off topic, but if I want to do an experiment on, ALS or diabetes or whatever it may be, what I need to do is very clearly write out there's a system in place, write out a protocol of how the experiment's going to go, how I can justify it, what my fallbacks are, how we're going to make sure it's properly cared for or run, what resources and reagents I'm going to need. All that stuff it goes through a group specifically designed to look over to make sure that it's a safe, justified, efficacious study. And only once they approve it am I actually allowed to do the experiments. And so it's not that I can't do any of the experiments you just mentioned. It's just not, what I was saying is I can't possibly get that done in a day because it's going to take a month just to get the approval to even start on it. So the good news for anyone listening is, if you want to look at it that way, is it's all very well regulated and checked over.
So with these regulations, and I don't know that side of the industry of the science portion. So with Medterra doing the studies with Baylor, and I don't know if it's a partnership or what you would legally call it. I know you have a lot of red tape, but are they supplying the CBD that is going towards your experiments, or how is that working?
Yes. So Medterra entered into what is called a sponsored research agreement with Baylor. And the way that works is they fund the work and they send the product. And in return, they get data. Mm-hmm. And I am allowed and expected to publish through the peer review scientific process, which I could get up on a pedestal right now and discuss how that process has been horribly subverted over the past several months. But go through the publication process and publish the results, good or bad. And I was very clear with Medterra, I do not control or manipulate the data. I'm only reporting it. If it works this way, great. If it works the other way, are you ready for that? And I was told point blank, absolutely, because if it works the other way, we'd rather know and change it than just blindly move forward. So that is how that relationship works. So yes, when I am working with CBD in the lab, it is not a research grade product I got from some chemical, plant or something. It is literally the CBD that Medterra is selling on shelves. And that includes the CBD that we used in the canine trial that I assume we'll talk about. But yes.
Yeah, I want to talk about that too, because I personally use cannabis on our animals with success. And so before we get in there, if you want to finish your thought process.
Oh no, we're good. I'll just keep rambling on if you let me.
Gotcha. So before we move on, cannabinoids, and if you want to share with our listeners what a cannabinoid is, and I always say I've heard everything 113 to 160. I'm around 140 now. We're 2 months ago I was about 120 on how many cannabinoids are out there. On your scale, where are you?
Oh my gosh. No, don't put that on me. I don't know how many there are.
Okay.
I can tell you there's about 2 endogenous ones. So people may not know. So our bodies actually make what are called cannabinoids. Like we actually produce products that would fall in that category, and they're called that because they hit the CB1 and CB2 receptors naturally. And those receptors are involved in things ranging from pain to sleep to things like that. CBD, what is called CBD, is the exogenous form from hemp that we take that also can bind to those receptors, CB1 and CB2. But it also binds to several other receptors, including the serotonin receptor, which I think is very interesting. And it binds to, at the moment, I've seen anywhere between 6 and 10 maybe well-vetted inflammatory receptors that CBD interacts with to reduce inflammation. So it's a very multifaceted molecule that is, I'm curious to see where it goes. As far as how many there are, you can guess better than I can.
Gotcha.
I don't have an answer.
So are you able to experiment with THC in your lab, or because Texas is not a legal state, is that?
Nope.
No. Okay.
You got it right. So for starters, Medterra has no THC.
Exactly.
They don't use THC in any of their products. It's one of their, I'd say, calling cards, one of the things they're very cautious about. As far as researching it, it's still a class 1. So It's not that we can't research it, but certainly not freely. We cannot just get THC shipped to us to research. And so up to this point, no, I have not researched anything with THC.
So you said class 1 a couple times. Do you, well, I guess with the Farm Bill it's changed, but there was a gray area for a while of where CBD fell under, because of the federal government still said, because it was from the cannabis plant, if we can go into that as well, it still would fall under the Schedule 1 scheduling. And what are your thoughts of the Schedule 1 scheduling of no medical benefits, but the patent is on medical benefits of CBD as a neuroprotector? Have you researched that portion of it, and if not, we can go over that.
Well, it's a heady subject. Various drugs, like I said before, they're scheduled by the DEA, and Schedule 1 are your, nefarious narcotics, LSD, heroin, cocaine, and yes, marijuana has, up to this point, is on that list, or has been at Schedule 1, and that included CBD. Yeah. And of course, if we can be fair, CBD certainly in past years was not as well known. So it just got lumped in with marijuana. Like they wouldn't know, oh, this particular, protein is okay. As evidence started showing up, and of course we should give a shout out then to GW Pharma getting Epidiolex FDA approved, which is CBD. It became pretty clear that CBD did not belong on the DEA Schedule 1 narcotic list. And so they dropped it. Now, the other organizations are very quick to tell you that does not actually mean it is now legal. Yeah. It just means the DEA is not coming after you if you have it. And yes, there's been a lot of confusion. What does the FDA say? What does the government say? What are we allowed to do? And it feels like a lot of them are kind of in a standing pattern, just waiting to see what happens here. But to the second part of your question, or somewhere in there, the FDA, what their role mostly is determining medical, in the drug space, in the pharma space, is determining medical benefit. Is a product safe, well tolerated generally, and is it efficacious against a certain indication? And do the rewards outweigh the risk? And so, GW went through years and years of clinical trials to show that Epidiolex, yes, it can help certain seizure disorders in children, and the reward outweighs the risk. And the FDA agreed and said, yes, that's FDA approved. To date, that is the only FDA approved CBD product, though.
It's funny because they came out originally with Sativex with a 1-to-1 ratio for MS patients, and which was available, I think, in 8 to 12 countries, not including the United States. And so everyone in the United States replicated that at 2.75 milligrams of THC, 2.75 milligrams of CBD, a 1-to-1 ratio, and they were having success with a lot of MS patients. And so I think they went back and go, okay, we didn't make money on this one. Let's see if we can go out there. And I have friends that have used Epidiolex and have had success. And I think it's very beneficial for the patients that don't live in legal states, one, but also very beneficial for the patients that cannabis costs money, and the insurance companies are covering this medicine. And I've seen it work. I say medicine because I've seen it work as medicine. And I know in the hemp industry, I don't think you're allowed to say medicine, correct? And you're not allowed to say patients.
So, okay. So yes, mate. So Sativex is actually still around and still going.
It is, but not available here. Yeah, not.
Well, it's in several clinical trials. It's not available to you, but it's moving through clinical trials for.
But available as a patient is in other countries are able to buy it, right? So,
well, I can't. So clinical trials are basically just large experiments.
Yeah.
Using humans. So right, they're the test subjects. They're not buying it and using it recreationally. They're using it to see if it actually addresses a need. And if enough proof comes out of those trials that it does, the FDA will most likely approve it.
But for the United States.
But to your other point, absolutely. And CBD companies, hemp companies are getting, I mean, there's been so many warning letters, and I don't know that they don't understand. You cannot and should not, quite frankly, it is a disservice to make medical claims without the backing of any legitimate scientific studies. And the FDA, they don't like that. So if you're Medterra, for example, or any of the other ones, and you say, take our CBD, definitely will help you with your headaches. No. How can you say that? No, you cannot. It's not a medicine. They are not patients. It is not, you cannot do that. And I will tell you, there are studies where the placebo effect, meaning the patients taking nothing, they report great responses. Sometimes as high as 40% of people will report a positive response in the placebo group.
Yeah.
So just because a CBD company can say, look, I've had 5 people call me today to say CBD helps with their headache. So what? Those 5 people. What if those are the only 5 out of 1,000?
Yeah.
You've got to do the FDA rigors, the clinical trials to be able to make any claims that I would say are that strong. So you can certainly point towards data. You can suggest. You could hem and haw about, hey, it might be beneficial in arthritis. But until you actually get that stamp of approval from the FDA, I would highly advise against making quote unquote medical claims or calling customers patients.
Yeah. And back to medical claims, I see a lot of companies out there that, have on their labeling, they'll say that. And I think, if you go to fda.gov, type in CBD, you'll see some of these letters, and it's scary. I mean, you don't want the FDA on your back about anything like that.
The concern there, I'll finish up on this.
Yeah.
The concern is that most people are not doctors.
Yeah.
Most people do not know what's going on biologically. They don't know what the problem is, not at a base level, and they don't know what they need to treat it. And if they are misled into thinking that they're getting actual benefit from an unproven, and remember, unregulated product, they may not go get the therapy they actually need from their doctor. And, we can't, I don't want to be responsible for that. So, anyway.
That's why I never use the word cure. And, for that, you can't even cure a common cold. And so I just, when I see companies out there that have that out there and make these claims, especially, being a spouse, a caregiver, for my wife, I put myself in other people's position. When you have that diagnosis, if it's something as severe as cancer or anything, you will do anything in your power. And the last thing you want to do is be sold something or be, because there are a lot of companies that sell on fear and scaring the patient and buying. And I just think that's just the wrong way. So I never want to give false hope. I am a fan of hope. I'm a fan of, we're here to support you and give you that hug that a lot of patients don't receive and need. And so, doing things like this show, gets us information out of what to look for, what to avoid, what to ask, I always say, ask the questions. Don't be afraid. Even if you live in an illegal state like Texas, talk about it with your doctor. It's not illegal to ask questions.
Of course not.
I want to go back into, so in your position, are you, will you become the medical director, or how is that going to be? Because I know you're I don't know if it was, I think
With Medterra?
Yeah, with Medterra.
So, of course, I still am an active researcher and a faculty member at Baylor. But I also, I've been a consultant for Medterra, and I think that's sort of evolved into, I think the term you're looking for is chief scientific officer.
There you go. Sorry. Yes.
And so my role went from, doing some research, double checking their products, giving them some suggestions on, ways to improve it or something like that, to my job is to keep them up to date, to know what the latest science is, to make sure they're at the front of it, using, going after the right things, doing the right things, what indications are being studied. We absolutely, I say you can't make claims, but we can absolutely talk about scientific publications, data, things that are out there that are very encouraging or pointing towards a certain way, helping them with their, I'll tell you, I mean, not to spill any beans, but Medterra is soon to launch. I don't know the specifics, and I would call it an advanced line. So CBD is not very bioavailable. It's kind of like curcumin. It's one of those things where you actually only probably get benefit of maybe it's been shown 2 to 20% of what you take probably actually makes its way to where you want it to go. And the rest is either excreted or metabolized down to something fruitless. I mean, in general, your body is not thrilled. If you want to picture it, it's almost like eating a screw. Your body, or a nail. Your body's like, this is not what I want. This is not water or something to easily break down. So a lot of people, they think they're taking 100 milligrams, maybe 2 milligrams by the time their body has digested it. Knowing that and being scientifically forward thinking, Medterra is coming up with a line that alleviates all those issues, and drastically improves the bioabsorption of CBD, and also avoids what's called first pass metabolism of the liver. And so it's going to help avoid drug-drug interactions or liver issues and things like that. And so that's just an example of staying on top of the science and what, they need, what direction they should go.
Yeah. I can talk about it, maybe you can't, but cannabis is not a one size fits all. CBD is not a one size fits all.
Absolutely.
I'm highly sensitive to, butter and salt and stuff like that. If I take CBD, it's in the morning, or I take it late at night, and I have to find my sweet spot, because sometimes it can, if I take too little, too much, I could be up all night. Sleep is really important to me. And so, like you said, more is not always better. And you made a great point. I always talk about, it's not a one size fits all. You should look at age, weight, current health condition, sensitivity, and then drug to drug interactions. And that was good. I'm glad you brought that up, because it is important to know, if there are drug to drug interactions too. Can you talk about, and I want to go into this, and I believe you did a peer reviewed study in a journal on pain about CBD with animals. And so I want to get into that, but let's go right into that. Let's talk about what you're doing with that study.
Sure. All right. So yes, we just a few weeks ago, it hasn't been out too long, we did have a paper published in the Journal of Pain, a paper that went through all the peer review process, the revisions, the normal way we publish papers in this country. And the paper highlighted a couple of different things, ranging from what we were seeing in the lab to what we could do with CBD in the world. And on this point, I'm going to mostly speak in my capacity with Medterra, as their consultant or scientist, and not per se on Baylor behalf. This wasn't necessarily Baylor doing this, but so in the paper, we are able to, in the lab, show that CBD, as I mentioned before, reduces inflammation. And it does that through a variety of ways, including hallmark inflammatory signals such as TNF alpha and interleukin 6. Those are just great examples of, if those things are up, you probably have some inflammation going on somewhere. So we saw that in the lab, and then we were able to test it in some small inflammatory models, not in a petri dish, but in appropriate animal models. And we saw, sure enough, CBD, the cream, is reducing swelling, it's reducing pain, it's reducing, again, these cytokines. So it looks like it's being very beneficial. And at about this point, Medterra said, this is all great, that's great science, but it's kind of, so what? I mean, how does that relate to the real world? Is it really working? And someone hopped in there and was like, we sell CBD we have a pet line, and I've heard people say it helps their dogs. Is there a way we could potentially show that actually is real, and it's safe? And so at this point in the story, I do put my disclosure that the entirety of the canine study was carried out at Sunset Animal Hospital, which is, if you go to their website, you'll see they're actually one of the few AHA accredited clinics in the country. I mean, they're a highly reputable clinic here in the Houston area. And I've worked with them before in other collaborations. So I said to Medterra, I said, well, I cannot experiment on dogs at Baylor. Like I cannot be, I mentioned before, I will never get approved for that. Can't do that. But I can put you, in touch with Sunset. They're a very good clinic. They see a lot of dogs. And, the topic of dog arthritis came up because you may not be aware, but it is estimated 20 to 90% of large breed dogs will develop osteoarthritis in their lifetime. And I was shocked by that. And when you look a little deeper, you'll see that osteoarthritis in dogs, very similar to osteoarthritis in humans. 35 million Americans have osteoarthritis right now. There's no cure. I mean, I've talked to a rheumatologist. It's like, yeah, we just give them Advil until they need a hip replaced or a knee replaced. We really don't have anything. So this got everyone more excited. Well, all right, let's just see what's going on here. So Medterra and Sunset, worked out the finer details. I can tell you right now, there was some discussion of going farther with the study. Let's look at the synovial fluid. Let's do imaging. And Sunset was like, it's kind of a catch-22. They were like, there's not even a publication that says there's actually any benefit here in the first place. So we're not going to do this invasive thing or this expensive thing. But what we're willing to do, we actually have a lot of dogs that have arthritis. We're very interested in CBD ourselves. So we'll do it. And we'll go ahead and do some blood draws to make sure everything's safe, liver enzymes, things like that, kidney function. And then we'll use appropriate scoring systems to score the dog's arthritis after 30 days of CBD use. So
orally, not topically, correct?
Orally, correct. So this was a 30-day study. It was placebo controlled. There was a group of dogs that only got placebo for these 30 days. It was double blinded, triple blinded if you want to count the dogs, but double blinded meaning the vet they were given either a placebo bottle, a low dose bottle, high, they were given one of the groups. They don't know which group it is, A, B, C, D. They gave it to the owner. The owner doesn't know. The owner signed informed consent. Yes, I know I might be in the placebo group. They don't know. And then the owner gave, their pet CBD every day, or at least they were supposed to, for 30 days, and then come back. And again, there were scoring systems revolving around the dog's pain and mobility and general attitude, that was being scored by both the owner and the vet. And so they're all blinded. So they don't know, let's just be honest. We don't even know what group we're in. And so what we saw then I get all the data. They don't even know it's an interesting setup. They don't know what the results are. They said, here's the data. And so I kind of put it together. And what we saw, what was seen, I'll say, is the dogs that got the placebo or the low dose of CBD didn't really see any benefit. the owners didn't see any benefit. The vet, they weren't more mobile. They weren't happier. And I thought that was it's a very low placebo effect. The two groups of dogs that got either the higher dose of CBD, and when I say high, we're still actually extremely low. This is pretty low. I think the high dose was 50 milligrams a day total. Or the better absorption form of CBD was also in the group, but with a lower dose. The dogs in those two groups saw 90%, I'd say, close to 100% of the dogs in those groups saw some sort of improvement to some degree that was qualified by the owners and or the vet. On average in those groups, we saw about a 50%, 40 to 50% reduction in pain scores. I mean, just honestly, and I told—
Are these in older dogs?
Yeah, average age of the dogs was about 10, 11 years old. Basically a 50-50 mix of male, female, great mix of breeds. I mean, all kinds of breeds, and that's all in the paper. The dog characteristics are there, but there were a lot of notes. Oh, my dog's so happy, and this has gone so great. And I can't put that in a publication. It's not objective or scientific, but it was nice. And I told Medterra, so I warned Medterra at the beginning. I said, guys, the data is going to be the data. Are you prepared? You're going to pay for this. I can't promise you it'll work. True to form, they said, yeah, we want to see. So we're, and I warned them. I was like, guys, 30 days is really short. Osteoarthritis is kind of a chronic issue. I don't know what kind of benefit we'll really see in just a month. And to my surprise, we saw, again, there was a pretty significant improvement in what I would call were the arthritic related symptoms of the dogs. And even to me as a scientist, more importantly, the two groups of dogs that saw benefit were still, there was a follow-up 2 weeks later where they weren't taking CBD. They still were reporting significant benefit.
Wow.
And so that tells me the CBD wasn't just masking the pain temporarily, but it was legitimately reducing the inflammation causing the pain. Yeah. And that was still lingering on even 2 weeks after they had stopped taking it. And so we saw great, I think, impressive efficacy. There were no red flags that popped up in any of the blood works, no adverse events, which means nothing catastrophic, no red flags. It was a very, it went very well. Yeah. And
so we were able to publish that. Baylor on the, since you're doing this, and again, these studies were not at the Baylor College of Medicine. And so will any studies on humans be taking place at Baylor anytime soon?
Yes. Short answer, yes.
Okay.
So at this point, Medterra is phenomenally interested in let's call it the pharma route for CBD. Like, hey, we would love to if CBD can help, we'd love to be able to help. We'd love to have an FDA approved product that we can make medical claims on.
Of course.
I just told you 35 million Americans have osteoarthritis. We just saw it work very well in dogs. An outbred, genetically diverse study, granted a small study, but could this be beneficial to humans? And we can sit here and play the anecdotal game all day long. I can point to the science. I can say, look what happened in this study. But the reality is, as I said before, if we want to actually make a claim and say, yes, it does, we need to do the clinical trials. Medterra needs to do the clinical trials. And Houston is just easily one of the top med centers in the world. I mean, we've just got so much that it makes sense to try and coordinate these trials in Houston with all the appropriate rigor and care that goes into that. So Medterra is moving that direction pretty rapidly, and soon enough, you'll probably be able to read that, yes, Medterra has launched a few clinical trials, and we'll see where that goes.
Good. Where is their CBD grown? Is it here in California, or where are they? Where are their farms?
So that admittedly is a better question for
them.
Jay, for them. Pretty sure It's grown in,
If you
I want
don't
to say,
know, just say, and we can get Jay on the show, but
yeah, by all means. I think it's grown in Kentucky, but
okay.
it's definitely in America.
Yeah.
And it's very, like I said, well sourced and CGMP certified. But
Good.
unless they've changed, I don't believe
Yeah.
it's in California.
Gotcha. What else are you studying over there? I mean, what else are you doing in your science with your
My
science
spare time,
in your spare time? Because as you mentioned, you're a husband, you're a father of three. What's happening with this whole COVID thing? Are they letting the kids go back to school, or are you and your wife having to do homeschooling stuff right now?
So right, they of course, like everywhere, shut down school.
Yeah.
So I've got three daughters, 10, 8, and 4.
Wow.
And the 4-year-old is really on it. Yeah, they shut everything down. They're planning to send the kids back to school in person, but it's still a few weeks. It's been bumped a few weeks.
Yeah.
So I'm not even sure if there's an official start date locked and loaded just yet. But yes, the plan is to send them to school. I know my wife could use the break.
It's funny. I talked to some parents, friends that have, and half of them are you going to send your kids back? Yes, we are. Take them.
I had a call earlier, and
Yeah.
I thought I would do it without my earbuds. As soon as I took them out, I hear my 4-year-old screaming. Who knows why? I'm like, all right, back in.
Well, good. Well, good. Well, and it's funny because we're in California. My nephew, he goes back to school in 2 weeks, but again, homeschooling. I was talking to a friend of mine this morning, and his family's out in Georgia, and they're all going back to school, in classes and stuff like that. So I don't know if it's, making its way down. I think it'll stop before it gets to Florida from you guys. But that's we're all going through a little stuff, right? This pandemic. It's. I always say it's kind of been like the Twilight Zone. We toasted in the New Year in 2020, saying this is the year. Next thing you know, stay inside. And so,
yeah, I could tell you about all the other research, but in reality, it's right. It's been largely shut down the past several months.
So before we get off, so I know Medterra has a whole line of products, from topicals to tinctures to pet products as well, and new things that are coming up. They have a nighttime melatonin CBD product that is a capsule, or not a capsule, excuse me, a tablet that you're able to snap and have. What's it called? Not perforated, but when
perforated's okay with me.
And so they're
Scored.
looking to get on court. Yeah, they're looking to get into the FDA approved in the medical side and the pharmaceutical side. I think this is where do you see this plant going for the future, or where do what do you see the benefits? What do you see in the future for this?
Right. Well, I'll tell you first my opinion, what has to happen. So CBD is not the first fad. This is not the first time this sort of thing has happened where everyone's rushing for it. Other things have popped up. I've seen, ashwagandha, curcumin, various things. And the reality is either you get serious science behind it, and that means in the clinical space, or you don't. And if you don't, it tends to sit on the supplement aisle at your grocery store, and you can take it if you want, but there's only so much advertising that anyone could do. It's another soapbox I have, but people, again, it's not just CBD that lacks regulation. I don't know who do they think is regulating all those supplements at the grocery store? The FDA doesn't regulate. It says right on their bottle, this has not been looked at by the FDA. So you're running into the same thing as I mentioned before. You don't even really know what you're getting if you haven't done your due diligence. So if science doesn't lead the way, this will fade down and probably end up being swallowed by the eventual legalization of marijuana. And so if we cannot, as scientists and doctors, show legitimate medical benefit to CBD, I think what will happen is it will it'll shrink, it'll dwindle. And if you see in 5 years, okay, marijuana is now legal, people will say, well, why don't I just take marijuana then? Why don't I just smoke a joint? Why am I taking CBD, which is just a part of it? And, it's going to be something the industry is going to have to deal with. On the other hand, if at that point there's a plethora of clinical trials pushing CBD through the regulated scientific process, saying yes, CBD in and of itself is beneficial, is safe and beneficial for this, for this, for this. Well, that's a game changer right there. Now you're okay. I mean, the reason I'm going to still stick with my CBD is it was vetted to help with osteoarthritis. I don't know if marijuana is going to help. I don't know if curcumin's really going to help. I mean, my grandma said it did, but who knows? Whereas this is going to be able to point to, no, that went through a trial. That's been FDA approved. So I do think Medterra is not the only one. I guess several of the larger players in the space you can see are starting to gear up to move to have those arms. I think they see that, and maybe I've been a part of that push. I don't know, because in all the things I do, I'm pretty open about that. Like, this needs to happen for the good of the industry. You need to actually do these tests. Prove it. Don't just say it, prove it. I think CBD may be very helpful for osteoarthritis, but that's just one man's opinion based on a study. No, let's prove it. Let's get into trials and actually see if there's benefit or not. And it's risky. Might not work, but it's the name of the game.
It's a start. I appreciate that. This type of, I always talk about it's the ripple effect. Throw the pebble in the pond, and this information gets out there. And so, just like you said, your background was not for the past 10 plus years has not been in cannabis.
Nope.
And CBD. Now it is, and what populates when they Google your name is Dr. Matthew Halpert and CBD. And so,
yep.
But again, getting this information out is important. Matthew, I appreciate your time. I appreciate what Medterra is doing and taking it to the next step, next level of showing the benefits of this plant and this cannabinoid. And I'm looking forward to what the future has to bring for all of us and this industry and for, I can say it, for patients. So I thanks Dr. Albert. I appreciate again your time, and love to get you back on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Everyone, this is John Malanca with United Patients Group. Be informed and be well. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.